Hello, I just want to do a quick action figure demonstration real quick. It's pretty late for me right now, so excuse me if I'm being a little more quiet. Um, I will say a couple of different things. When I don't got a tripod, this isn't going to be very well edited. I just want to do a quick demonstration. So let me tell you the three figures that you see here. You probably recognize them all if you've been within the action figure community for a good bit. You can see that that is Jada Toys, Ryu right there. This is one of the Marvel Spider-Mans that been they used this body mold a couple times. Uh, so really you could like swap it out for like a number of any. It really up to you. And this is the Plague Spawn. Now, one thing I want to get out of the way right off the bat. Um, the Plague Spawn I have modified, not substantially. I did a little bit of tweaking to the neck and a little bit of tweaking to the waist, and I want to get a couple things across. Um, I don't know if I'll be editing this. If I do, you'll see what I'm really trying to get at here. A lot of torso articulation is not in. I'll use Plague Spawn as a demonstration here. A lot of the torso articulation is not in the upper part of the abs. It's not up there at all. It is all down here mainly. You'll get a little bit of movement up there, but you don't typically get a lot. Even after I modified it, you don't get a lot of movement up there. And that's not me just saying with McFarlane. That's with all of these companies. Even Hasbro, who is still persistent on using the ball and socket joints at the top of their figures rather than just using the ball and sockets all around. Another thing I want to get out of the way real quick. I am not in favor of either of these companies. I'm not a fanboy of any of these. I do have my preferences. I love the articulation mostly of Jada a lot. I think in terms of like fun factor, the Marvel Spider-Man figure is really fun to play with. And in terms of sculpting, I honestly love the Plague Spawn. There's a lot of little details, a lot of little bit of paintbrushing in there. This is one of their best figures out there, and that's why I'm using it as an example to show that people who crap on a lot of McFarlane figures really don't cut them a lot of slack. Now, I own numerous figures. I've purchased numerous figures from each line. I purchased the M Bison and I haven't purchased every one. There's not honestly isn't a whole lot. I've purchased the M Bison and the what was it, Ken from one line. I've even messed around a little bit with Chun Li, not much. It was mainly from my friend's display. I've messed around with it, quite like it, pretty decent. I own numerous Marvel Legends figures. A lot. I own the entire Venom Build-A-Figure wave. I own a good bit of the. I own the Toxin. I own the Null. I own a lot of figures. You know what? I'll just give you a quick shelf rundown, real quick. Give it a quick rundown. That fell. That fell. This is an old shelf. But I own a lot. As you can see, a lot of my shelf is Hasbro. Now, I do own a good bit of McFarlane too, but not nearly as much as I do have something. But yeah, again, I own a lot right there. All right. But yeah, I own a lot from each line. Let me just get into the demonstration real quick. Again, modified Plague Spawn and stock Marvel Legends Spider-Man and stock Ryu Jada toys. Modifications I've done to the Plague Spawn is not very much. It's very limited compared to what I've seen other people done. And honestly, this makes it. Let me just show you. So first thing I wanted to demonstrate was the app crunch, and you can't quite see it, but they're all on par with each other pretty much. That is all I wanted to get at, mainly that they're all on par with each other. Marvel Legends was not superior. Jada was not superior in terms of going forward, and same with McFarlane. I think that this is actually crunching a bit more, but it's kind of more difficult to tell. and just a wee bit more. Alright, now check this out. Now, again, I'm posing these figures each at their extreme and like going from this side a little bit. Jada's faring pretty good, and Image Plague Spawn is doing pretty good. Marvel Legends is lacking behind, and that's because of the way they're doing their articulation. I am not going to side with Marvel Legends or either. Again, I have my preferences, but I'm really just talking this as a person who loves all IPs. I want to get this across to you. If you think that this is okay for especially a Spider-Man figure, a character who is known for.
Sorry about that. Had to cut out the recording and come back. So, as you could see with that, to continue my previous point, if you think that the articulation with the Marvel Spider-Man is fine, you either, again, I'm saying this in the nicest way possible, either you haven't read a Spider-Man comic and you're not too familiar with the character, or you just simply do not care and want to continue to just support one specific company because that's how you feel comfortable with. Now, again, I will not say anything. I will not say anything for these companies. I will not say factually one is better than the other. I will not say that, you should support any of these companies. It's really up to you. If you want to go out there and give McFarlane a try, I highly recommend some of their Spawn figures. But that's besides the point. Spider-Man, the Marvel Legends Spider-Man figures, I would wait until they make release their most recent Spider-Man figures. They fix the shoulders a little bit, raise them up a little bit. And with Jada, I would highly recommend Fei Long. Fei Long is incredible from what I've seen. And if you can't get hold of Fei Long, honestly, any of them will do in terms of like articulation. Ryu's just fine. And if you just want to get a Ryu figure because that's what you're most familiar with, get Ryu. He's an alright character. What I will say, however, is that for the longest time, I absolutely loved Marvel Legends. They were my go-to in terms of anything articulated figure, anything that was like a highly articulated action figure. They were my go-to. I despised McFarlane with a burning passion, like a lot of people currently do, and a lot of people used to. I think people come back around and realize that they're not too bad, but for the most part, they get a lot of flack that I honestly do not think they deserve, because a lot of it was from like when they're earlier starting out with the DC multiverse license, which they've since gotten so much better with. It's honestly kind of insane that they're still not getting recognized as well as they should be, for like the things that they're doing really, really good. And yeah, not to keep you here for any longer, I want to show you the neck articulation. And if you think the neck articulation with the Hasbro figure is fine after I show you it, I want you to take a moment or two, zoom in on the photo a little bit more, zoom in on the video a little bit more, and fully take in what you are observing. Alright, and here's the neck articulation now. Alright, and here they all are looking up. And as you can probably see, they're all looking up about the same height. I think Marvel Legends has them beat very slightly. Honestly, not by much, especially if you're looking at their nose, like the line where the nose on Spider-Man should be. See a slight bend. I think that's where they wanted the nose to be. You can see that's about the same, especially with Plague Spawn. He's even hunched over a wee bit. It's about the same. But with Marvel Legends, there's that gap. And there you have that gap. Not even connected to the neck. The head is not connected to the neck at all. Maybe a little bit, but that is ugly. That is not good. If you want to tell me that is good, I'm sorry, I can't side with you on that, especially when you're looking at this and you see that you get the same exact movement, pretty much very slightly better, if I really wanted to give them that argument, very slightly better neck articulation looking up and only up for how they did this particular figure. Maybe it's a little better with the more recent ones, but I doubt it because, again, they reuse the same body molds very frequently. And I've looked at the back of the necks. They still have the same exact little divot that the Marvel Legends has that none of these other figures have. They still have that divot in the neck, making me think that I don't think this gap has ever been fixed, like they've ever went back and tried to resolve it. Now let's go to side movement, and this is where you can see even more. And now that we're looking at the neck going from side to side, you can see that the Jada toys really good, especially with the neck articulation, but that neck ain't doing much. It's more or less in the head. You can kind of see it, but still, especially, you can kind of see it here, especially. A lot of it's in the head, Plague Spawn's doing very well. Again, no divot in either of these two figures, and Marvel Legends is lacking behind substantially. Again, I'm not saying either of these are bad. If you think that I'm actively saying that this is a horrible figure because of this, you're not listening to me. You are just hearing what you want to hear. What I am saying is that if you think that this is fine, which it is very clearly not, you either don't know who Spider-Man is, you haven't read any of his comics, or you just don't care and you really just want to support a company because that's what you're used to and you don't feel like stepping out of your comfort zone. If you have any other reasons, I feel free to tell me, but really, I can't imagine looking at it any other way. Now, why did I make this entire demonstration? Why did I bother going through the effort of recording all these figures in different little poses, showing you the extent of their articulation? It's because all these companies have a good bit to learn. Very clear things that they each need to learn. Even McFarlane, even though, again, I love their figures, even they have a lot to learn. The fact that I had to modify this figure at all is a little excessive. This figure kicks up more than the Marvel Legends, and everything, honestly, is either on par or better than the Marvel Legends after I've modified it, especially. But McFarlane still needs to learn how to cut the joints a little bit more properly. That's their main thing. They really got to cut the joints properly. Other than that, I think they're an excellent company. Jada, honestly, my only real gripe is that they're not more available. And I think they're doing too much. Really, with the articulation, not like there's too much movement. No, you can never have too much movement. What you can have is just a little bit excess. You don't need that neck joint. It's not super necessary. It's kind of ugly looking, especially if you do the head right. You really don't need the neck joint. It's not super necessary, but still nice to have. Even if a little ugly. Marvel Legends. Marvel Legends needs to fix their head articulation and ditch this. This is not a good way to have head articulation into a Spider-Man figure, especially if they're going to be sculpting it this way where it juts out to the side like that. It's ugly. It's not good. And again, I'm not saying I love McFarlane and that you should buy every single last one of their figures. They're a steal. I just want to put in perspective for a lot of people. This is what I've observed very frequently. Even when I compared the Marvel Legends to the Hasbro in terms of like the sculpting and stuff like that, McFarlane has so much more sculpt. Sure, you could argue that Hasbro is like maybe better proportioned, which kinda, if you squint a little bit, maybe you could argue that they're better proportioned. For the most part, they're pretty equal, especially these two figures. The real thing is that there's so much more like little paint details and all this other stuff going out throughout the entire figure, Whereas Marvel Legends, a much larger company than McFarlane is still giving us like little to no paint. Like it's the web lines and that's all we're getting. The glossy eyes and that's it. Ain't too much there. And Jada again, also doing more than Hasbro, and even though they got even less, they really gotta be doing. They could have had that as a solid, like, good flesh color, and it would have been just fine. But they've even added, kind of hard for my camera to pick up. They even added little like shadings and details all throughout the entire figure. I want to go over price real quick. All these figures at retail cost the exact same. Jada has the most accessories, whereas these two have the same exact amount. McFarlane actually has a little bit more this time around. I'm not even gonna lie. He comes with two different pairs of hands, so those two hands, and then the stand, and then another stand that's like skulls coming up with like spikes poking through them. A little unnecessary to have two stands, but it's still kind of nice. Whereas this figure, it only includes the two hands, and still priced the same as all these other figures at retail. Not only that, I had to pay retail for this figure still because for some reason people ate this stuff up. I can't imagine why. And I had to pay a little bit more for this figure actually. I bought it at FYE. I had a little bit of a discount with it. I bought it for almost $30. Retail this is $25. Do not buy it for $30. But even then, it still doesn't feel like that much of a waste, It still doesn't feel like I got ripped off because of how good the figure is, And this figure, I got the cheapest out of the bunch, which if you're familiar with McFarlane should come as no surprise, especially on Amazon and all these other companies. They're going for very cheap when you try to buy them. Very cheap. They'll go discount like very quickly. And which is where they'll typically get picked up at and never end up at Ollie's, unlike some other companies, I'm really trying not to turn this into a diss on Marvel Legends as a whole, but when you go into an Ollie's, and I know that not everyone has an Ollie's, but it's a good example to show how big of a flop they make these figures. When you enter an Ollie's, and one of the first things you see in their like action figure section that they have is a wall, like a sea of like just Marvel Legends, Eternals, and even some comic book stuff that just does not perform well. You start to wonder whether or not they're producing too much of this stuff, and that I don't know. I'm thinking too much into it. Regardless, I saw the MODOK at the Ollie's, and I saw the MODOK at the Ollie's, and then I saw the Tarantula at Ollie's. I think a couple other figures. Even the figures that a lot of people were saying people are going to buy this stuff up immediately, like the Loki show figure where it was like the more comic book accurate suit from the show. Even that landed at Ollie's, and it stayed there for a good while. No one bought it. Comic book Black Panther ended up at Ollie's too. No one bought that either. I can list a bunch of different comic book stuff that ended up at Ollie's. With McFarlane, they had, I think, a bunch of like the Black Adam figures, comic book Black Adam figure, and like that Build-A-Figure wave, a bunch of those, and it was a lot of like Disney figures, but really wasn't anything that I don't think McFarlane was too keen on like supporting anyways. It was mainly just like two very obvious flops, nothing surprising there, Whereas again, Marvel Legends had so many figures at Ollie's. Jada, they have like their cars there, but honestly, none of their figures are going to be there. They're imports. People love Jada toys, and honestly, I don't blame them. Here is how I'm going to be ranking these companies. I would rank this at number 1, for very clear reasons, number 2, and number 3. But that's pretty much it. If you want to add any more thoughts, feel free to add a comment down below. Let me know anything that you personally think about any of these companies and whether or not you think I got anything particularly wrong. If you love Marvel Legends, I'm going to apologize now because I know it did little bit turn into a rant on them. But you have to understand there's issues here. There really are a lot of issues here. If you think that this is fine, please take another look. Listen a little well. Don't take this as like a hate letter towards any of these companies. Take it as me just telling you my personal experiences and the stuff I've faced with these companies. All right.